Hello, everybody. We did it. We are back. We are alive. It is back and to basics. Yay!
Yay!
Yay! For those of you who don't know and are tuning in now, welcome aboard inexplicably. I am Pastor Don, and I'm joined by the lovely, the magnificent, the wonderful, the I keep running out of expletives, Courtney Fraley.
Expletives.
Yeah, well, I have to use modifiers to stress how awesome you are, right?
Honorifics? Adjectives, perhaps? Just adjectives?
Yeah, well,
You've your vocabulary's gotten all scrambled because you've been working too hard.
when is that not the case? So, we have got an absolute banger of an episode today, which I haven't told Courtney this yet what the episode title is, and I think she's just going to just enjoy it immensely. Because we're going to be working through Exodus 10, and we've got the plagues of locusts and darkness. So the title of the episode is, Hey, who turned out the lights? Because it has to be. And if
How did you know that was one of my favorite games back in the day?
Yeah, well, that and the old school Doctor Who reference.
Hey, who turned out the lights as an old school Who reference? Because it immediately makes me think of TMNT2, the arcade game.
Ah, I figured you'd be thinking of the Vashta Narada.
Oh yeah, that's right.
See, that was my guess.
But no, in the episode, it made me think of that too. I was
Yeah.
like, hey, who turned out the lights? Even sounds all weird and stilted. It's just perfect. Anyway.
Yeah. So we have at least one person in the chat. So hello. So nice
I'm just
to see
fixing
activity.
my lighting situation that I neglected to fix earlier.
No worries.
There we go.
All right. So then, without further ado, do we want to just get right into it? We've got.
Okay, there we. Yes, now that I no longer look like I'm hiding in a cave. Apologies.
I think you're fine.
It's like,
all right. Are you ready to read us our verse today, Madam Courtney?
I mean, I'd like to say I am, but I do not have the link pulled up. I am ill prepared, if nothing.
Yeah. Well, you're in good company. I rarely prepare for any of these. I figure it's just off the cuff is the best way to do it, you know? So, yeah. All right. We got us Exodus 10. Well, you look that up. I'm going to bring this up on the big screen here so folks can see. Because we have got the 8th plague, which be locusts.
All right. Oh, come on, load. Okay. Apologies, y'all. I have a slow old computer that I'm blessed to even have. Okay. All right.
So do we want to break this in half since we got the 2 plagues, or do we want to just kind of one shot it and then discuss them both?
Hang on, which chapter are we on? Because I gotta.
Exodus 10.
Ah, excellent.
In the good old Nurse Vu.
There we go.
Success?
Yeah. Yeah, it just took me a minute to load everything up. Okay. If I can get my cursor back. There we are. I feel like a boomer. Okay, let's see here. With Exodus 10. Then the Lord said to Moses, Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his officials, in order that I may show these signs of mine among them, and that you may tell your children and grandchildren how I have made fools of the Egyptians, and what signs I have done among them, so that you may know that I am the Lord. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, so that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your country. They shall cover the surface of the land, so that no one will be able to see the land. They shall devour the last remnant left you after the hail, and they shall devour every tree of yours that grows in the field. They shall fill your houses and the houses of all your officials and of all the Egyptians. something that neither your parents nor your grandparents have seen from the day they came on earth to this day." Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Pharaoh's officials said to him, "How long shall this fellow be a snare to us? Send the people away so that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined?" So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go, serve the Lord your God. But which ones are to go?" Moses said, "We will go with our young and our old. We will go with our sons and daughters and with our flocks and herds, because we have the Lord's festival to celebrate." He said to them, "The Lord indeed will be with you, if ever I let your little ones go with you. Plainly, you have some evil purpose in mind. No, never. Your men may go and serve the Lord, for that is what you are asking." And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt, so that the locusts may come upon it and eat every plant in the land, all that the hail has left." So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. When morning came, the east wind had brought the locusts. The locusts came upon all the land of Egypt and settled on the whole country of Egypt, such a dense swarm of locusts as had never been before, no ever shall be again. They covered the surface of the whole land so that the land was black, and they ate all the plants in the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Nothing green was left on the trees or on the plants in the fields in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh hurriedly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Do forgive my sin this once, and pray to the Lord your God that the least he remove this deadly thing from me." So he went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord. The Lord changed the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in all the country of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go. The ninth plague, darkness. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward heaven, so that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness that can be felt." So Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, and there was dense darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. People could not see one another, and for 3 days they could not move from where they were, but all the Israelites had light where they lived. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, "Go, serve the Lord. Only your flocks and your herds shall remain behind. Even your little ones may go with you." But Moses said, "You must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings to sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also must go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind, for we must choose some of them to serve the Lord our God, and we will not know what to use to serve the Lord until we arrive there." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he was unwilling to let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, "Get away from me. Take care that you do not see my face again, for on the day you see my face you shall die." Moses said, "Just as you say, I will never see your face again." Okay.
All right. Well, I think it's safe to say shit went down.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So, thoughts?
Sorry, I needed to get my breath back. It just like pulling teeth to get Pharaoh to freaking acknowledge that, like, there's not just a getting out of this. You've been shown this as clearly as can be, as many times as anyone could expect.
Yeah.
You to have a chance, and nah.
Pharaoh ain't screwing around here, and neither is God. And
Pharaoh says, "Fuck them slaves.
well, one of the things
They're gonna keep working."
one of the things I find really interesting about here is what I call the incrementalism of the racist here, which is something we see modernly a lot. If you watch Pharaoh's thought process here, from the get-go, Moses is exactly clear about what he's wanting. Let us go out into the wilderness so that we can serve the Lord. Us, all of our people, man, women, child, flocks, herds, all of our stuff, let us go out and serve the Lord, and we'll build into a more kind of equitable relationship. Pharaoh, on the other hand, despite knowing that this is a justice issue, doesn't want to go all the way. He's like, okay, fine, take the dudes. Moses is like, no, I said everybody. It's not justice until all of us are experiencing justice. To which Moses is like, well, fuck you then. You're turning away my good gift, my generosity to you. What ungrateful little shit you are.
This chapter in particular reads again like the pretense that was used at one point about them leaving for the purposes of a festival,
Mm-hmm.
with the idea of like, oh, we'll come back,
Yeah. And this plays into a lot of what we talked about when we first started getting into the Moses story. That the original idea seems to have been that God wanted not necessarily to pull the Israelites out of Egypt, but to pull the Israelites out of bondage and build an equitable relationship with them as equals within the Egyptian community. And that Pharaoh was just like, no, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that. And his intransigence turned this into, okay, well, we're just going to take them the fuck out then, and then you can be fucked all on your own. But that seems to be like a developing trend here. Remember what I said way back in the beginning about how God has a plan, but that plan can go down a million different branches depending on how cooperative or uncooperative the participants in that plan are. So I do firmly believe
he's running the world's most effective Batman gambit.
yeah, pretty much. Like you can do this the easy way or you can do this the hard way, and he keeps turning down the easier way, and God's like, all right, well, you get the fucking batarang then. And that's pretty much it. So like this is kind of I think what we're seeing here. But it's matched with, again, that incrementalism of the racist here, the belief that I will generously give you this small portion of the justice you demand, and if you're not grateful for it, then I will fuck you sideways with a pine cone.
I'm giving you more than the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Praise me.
Exactly. And that's what Pharaoh is in effect getting at here. And Moses and, by association God, of course, see right the hell through it. They're like, no, nah, man, this ain't how that go. This is not what justice is. The more things change.
Yep. I mean, it's again like the entire "Let my people go" Moses and Pharaoh story is just a very clear example of the importance of the repetitive nature of like literature effectively at this point in time to get ideas across. For emphasis, you repeated it over and over and over, and there's emphasis here because it second verse same as the first is what it keeps being. This time it's frogs, this time it's locusts, this time it's dark, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, here, you need to do what God says or bad shit's gonna happen. No, and then bad shit happens. Repeat.
Yeah. And, I'm going to go ahead and, point out, too, that in the middle of all of this, we have, what's it in verse 7 here? I think. Yeah. Pharaoh's servants, the courtiers. How long is this fellow going to be a snare to us? Send off the men so that they may worship the Lord their God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is lost? That's how Alter renders verse 7 here. And, I like, first off, I like their kind of closing exclamation here because, in the NRSV we get, do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined? Which suggests, particularly to a modern ear, an economic disadvantageousness rather than, what Alter gets at with the translation, which is, we have lost this as in we have lost a war. The country is lost to us. Egypt is lost.
I mean, there's no food. The water's all ruined.
Yeah. There's shattered trees, bug and animal corpses everywhere. Yeah. And still Pharaoh's like, nah, fuck that, man. We're going to need these slaves to rebuild after all this stuff.
All right.
And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring this up too. This is a very nuanced language point, but I think it's kind of interesting. In verses 7 and 11, verse 7, and Pharaoh's servants said to him, how long will this fellow be a snare to us? Send off the men that they may worship the Lord their God. And the NRSV, I think it's much the same. Send the people
away.
Yes.
Isn't this?
Yeah. Now, the NRSVUE,
Even officials in the original were saying, the men, send the men,
well, no, not
throw a
necessarily.
bone.
In this case, the
No?
NRSVUE is actually probably more technically precise. Although
Really?
what Alter's trying to do is kind of play off the dialogic exchanges here. And I'm going to read from his
Yeah.
notes here. In verse 7, the word they use for men, as Alter translated, or as people, as the NRSVUE translated, is anashim, which kind of has the connotation of maleness to it, but can also very easily mean just people in general. And then that is counterbalanced by in verse 11, where he says, "No, not so. Go pray the men and worship the Lord." Or here, no, never. Your men may go and serve the Lord, as it says in the NRSVUE. Now, what's interesting here is that Pharaoh doesn't use anashim the way that the courtiers who were speaking to him first did. Like, send me guide people away. The people, send the people away. Get the fuck rid of them. And he hears that, but because anashim has a double meaning, the Pharaoh kind of gets to choose his take on it, and he pivots from anashim to gevarim, which is a word that is specifically dudes. So even the courtiers, even his kind of servants, are giving him the option, like, we're going to use a word that can mean male, can also mean people. It's kind of open to interpretation in the way that, like, send the men away in kind of like older English, when we were still using gendered pronouns for fucking everything, might have been interpretable in both ways. That's kind of how anashim works. So he had the option of taking whichever way he want. And so it'd be kind of like if someone in that older version of English said, yeah, let's send the men away. And the Pharaoh responded, all right, everybody with a dick out. Like, he's choosing to be more specific about the male aspect than he needs to be. And so he's making a decision. And this is, I gotta stress, this is not necessarily coming from the courtiers here. It's not necessarily coming from the servants. He is choosing through his word choice to pivot this into a more restrictive, more conservative dimension.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know, I love the kind of language nuance that Hebrew is capable of that we kind of don't do in English.
I mean, I don't know. There's places where it matches up rather well, I think. But yeah, that's it, because the way you're describing it makes sense. I can't think of a good example in English, but
Yeah, it works.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like saying, okay, we need to fire all of the mailmen.
Right.
And then someone choosing to interpret that as all of the he/him mail delivery
People, yeah.
people,
Right. That's
mail
pretty,
carriers.
that's probably the best example we can get at in modern English, but I'd say that's pretty accurate right there. Like,
Yeah. So there's definitely equivalencies. It definitely does make sense in the English, I think. But I do think if you're not going to get all of that detail and discussion, it's probably more helpful to put it the way the NRSVUE
I tend to
put
agree.
it.
I tend to agree. And again, this harkens back to something we talked about in the Christianity 101 class last month. Single person translations of the Bible have key weaknesses like that, which is why we don't use them as like central pulpit Bibles. They're informative texts bordering on commentary. Some of them very, very good, like this one. Some of them absurdly evil, like our good pal C.I. Schofield and his bullshit. But in either case, they do still have the limitations of, a lack of kind of multiple voices presenting these different opinions. So I'm not gonna call this a misstep on Alter's part per se. I understand why he's doing it, and he has the benefit of providing copious notes and supporting information in that type of text.
I'm just saying, I very much get why this is what they went with for the NRSVUE.
Oh, absolutely. And
it's one of those cases then where it's like, but you're leaving information out. It's not all that accurate. No shit, it's not that accurate. It's a deep translation.
Yeah. And again, this is where I talk to people about biblical translations too. The Alter's translation and the NRSVUE have different purposes. Like, the NRSVUE is meant for a general laity reading of the text. It's not meant for people who are going to deeply study this with a knowledge of and heart for the ancient languages. probably, I'd say fully half the people who are reading the NRSVUE don't realize that it is a translation. Even with the NRSVUE, there's a bunch of folks who read this who are like, yeah, the Bible's written in English. Was that King Jimmy guy, right? You know? So, as frustrating as that is.
I'm reasonably certain English was not a language back then. Certainly not, definitely not as we speak it.
Yeah, well.
But maybe some kind of Proto-Celtic or something? I have no idea.
You know, again, I'm going to go ahead and say, for those who are watching / listening, go back and check out the lesson 2 of our kind of Christianity 101 course that we're doing, because I get into this in a lot more detail here where I really pick apart those biblical translations. But yeah, King Jimmy's English is probably the closest to modern English of the older variations. But even still, it's, you know, probably closer to Middle English in a lot of respects too. And it is still, 1600 years removed from the source languages and multiple translations too. We also have the issue that, like, our old buddy James T. King here was drawing from the, like, a lot of the Latin texts and earlier versions of the Greek that are less accurate, like Septuagint texts and stuff like that we don't normally use for translation in a more kind of modern academic era. So, yeah, lots of problems with the King James. But my point being, for those of you who don't know, it is a translation. That said, the NRSVUE, like most general purpose translations, is, again, general purpose. It's meant to be read by people who don't necessarily know all this. And that's okay, but that's why they often take less nuanced approaches with how they render things. Yay! Context and background information. Woo! So, yeah.
What have we got to really go on this one? Because, I mean, there's a great deal of repetition. The locusts are a big deal, and, like, locusts are a legitimately big deal. I mean, locusts are such a strange concept. I mean, if I can geek out for a second, locusts are such a strange concept in nature to begin with, and just the fact that it's a real thing, that you've got a species of grasshopper.
Yeah.
That, you know, in small populations, like regular populations, act normally. But when they get to a certain tipping point of population, they physically change and their behavior changes, and it's like just a very, very strange bit of nature. And I'm sure there's something about human nature to be said in there too, about if you get enough of us in a large
swarm behavior is observed in a lot of different species. Locusts are perhaps the easiest one to see it in because of how dynamic that change tends to be. But I would argue we do very much see swarm behavior in humans. What do you think modern conservative politics in the U.S. is, and evangelicalism? When you get people in a large enough number, they stop thinking independently and start behaving as kind of a mindless collective in a lot of ways.
Much like the way people too tightly packed in a crowd will start flowing like a liquid as opposed to moving as individual people.
And that
it's very scary what we can do when we surrender control of who we're going to be.
By choice or by not, because I'm like, the person in the middle of that crowd may be attempting to exert their agency as strongly as possible, but held by the press of the crowd can do nothing about it.
No, once it gets going, that's it.
And that's,
you live or you die. You get no choice.
And that's true kind of across nature in a lot of respects. The way that swarm dynamic really kind of takes over stuff. And like locusts, by the way, and this was something I remember being brought up in the seminary when we were talking over this text. Locusts in ancient times are not the same thing as the kind of locusts we see today.
How so?
Well, largely, and this comes from exploration.
I mean, I know evolution, but it's only been like so many thousand years. That's not very long.
Yeah, I'm not talking evolutionarily speaking. I'm talking about literally the availability of what you were just talking about. So nowadays we have cities and development and all this other shit around us. We have like control over our environment in ways that weren't really the case even 400 or 500 years ago. We cover.
I mean, Egypt was doing so well because the flooding of the Nile during that period
Mm-hmm.
was predictable enough
Yeah.
to prosper. But
Right.
again, a floodplain being predictable is
Mm-hmm.
what these folks were relying on. They didn't have, well, no, they probably did have
Right.
some degree of irrigation, but yeah, they didn't have the same tight control over
Yeah.
their living conditions that we do
But
nowadays.
now let's consider that this is we're just told Egypt. We don't know exactly what city. We assume Cairo or something thereabouts. Um, and
I mean, they're dealing with the pharaoh where they're like multi-pharaohs, so
no, it's pretty much consistent. Again, we're far enough back in history that we don't know how far back in history we are, which is indicative.
oh
But
yes,
like
that old
at that
nut.
point in time, there like the fact that we're not identifying a particular city is indicative of the issue at hand because there really wasn't multiple cities. It was just Egypt. And the line
Yeah.
between like Egypt, the cities, the state that we know today, the nation we know today, covers a lot more territory than Egypt of the like proto ancient world, which was really just like a city and some change there.
And
With
then there were points during which the Egyptian Empire spanned a great deal more than what they currently occupy.
right, but even the empire spanning that period of time, the like when we talk about history, we don't we tend to map our understandings onto history. So we think of like the really ancient Egyptian empire, and we think about it in almost metropolitan terms, a whole bunch of cities spread out across great distances, interconnected by roads and networks and stuff like that. Now, in the ancient world, it wasn't that. Like territory was largely empty. There's a reason why, like we've talked before about how the idea of like the mountain of the dead or the river of the dead and all these other like metaphysical concepts were just like, yeah, we don't know where the fuck anything is, so we're pretty sure that hell is literally just over that mountain over there because nature was unexplored and mystic at that point. We didn't like a lot of it was just we don't fucking know, and this is in the days where we have the deep forests and shit like that in kind of Europe and in North America. And who knows what the fuck the desert looked like in those points. Like desert regions are some kind of crazy shit. So then you take that understanding. The Egypt Empire may have been huge, but they probably only controlled in practice about like a half a dozen cities across that same amount of territory because there wasn't fucking a lot there. And all
And
the
this is a time so far back where nature was very wild too. It hadn't
yes.
been spoiled.
And that brings us back to the locusts. Now, when we think of locusts today, we think about, insects and they'll come together in swarms, but like not as a like the apocalyptic description of locust here seems crazy over the top until you realize
Yeah, it seems like what locusts actually do just times a million.
right, but then you realize it was all untamed nature back then. So locusts naturally operated in swarms. And what's being described here is probably like literally like a couple of different swarm cells coming together and beginning to operate as a megaswarm, which is something that can't really happen today because we have so much more of nature fucking covered and broken up. So there are dynamics. The insects themselves have presumably not evolved all that much in the last 5 to 10,000 years, but their ability
Yeah.
to exercise these kind of macro level dynamics has almost assuredly changed over the time. So this is not even
Yeah, that makes
necessarily
a lot of sense.
right. So this is not even necessarily out of the realm of nature itself. It's just not something that we can see today because of how much of the damn planet we've covered.
Yeah.
Swarms can't connect like that anymore. We don't have giant herds or swarms or groups of anything anymore. Everything's much
Yeah,
more tightly
the
controlled and contained.
percentage of wilderness left on this planet is embarrassingly low.
Yeah.
It's something that really like upsets me from a Christian perspective, actually, because we're explicitly told to be stewards
Yeah.
of this world, and we are doing a fantastically shitty job of that.
Oh, just the
So,
worst. And I was reading
if anyone wants to understand why I went so just like maudlin over that, watch the Richard Attenborough, the like documentary on the changes in the planet over the course of Richard Attenborough's life, or David Attenborough,
yeah.
sorry. But or just to make it a lot quicker, look up cover like forest coverage on the planet, uh 50, 100, 150, maybe even 1,000 years ago, and compare it to now, and then cry.
Yeah.
We've done terrible, terrible things to this planet.
Yeah, we talk about the rainforest and stuff like that. Or at least we did in the '90s. We kind of stopped giving a shit about it now. As
Well, I mean, when the president of Brazil is like, fuck it, burn it down, what can you do?
Right, but like I remember that
That's just what
being
I'm saying.
back when we were in like high school and even college. Like save the rainforest was kind of a big thing in the white folk circles in the West anyway. Uh, but we kind of stopped caring about that. But it's also worth noting that we had an equivalent to rainforests in North America and in Europe and things like that that were just as dense, that were just as magnificent. I mean, hell, we talk about those gigantic California redwoods of old, and we kind of forget that those were more the norm than anything back in the day.
Yeah. Well, North America in particular was hilariously wild just because of how wide.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really, really wide and never got really overdeveloped. Again, Russia, you've got huge areas of like, that Russia still has some sections of really old forest
Mm-hmm.
left that you don't find almost anywhere on the planet.
Right.
Just again, because it's so fuck off huge. It's just so wide.
Yeah.
There's so much there. Ugh.
Right. And I there was a reposted Tumblr post that I was reading on Facebook because I'm old. And I'm pretty sure this is one that you reposted later on too. So I'm pretty sure you'll recognize it. It was talking about how different cultures perceive growths of specific things like wheat or corn or barley and things like that. How like Americans, we tend to get a little bit freaked out by large cornfields. We think there's going to be like children in them corn and stuff like that. Of the children of the corn variety, we tend to freak them out. But a lot of people from native heritage, and again, I'm going to generalize, tend to view them as more comforting. But large,
I was gonna say you're missing an important factoid here. The huge
that's where I'm
monoculture
getting the
fields of corn
monocultures.
are
Yeah,
alarming. A
yeah.
small patch of corn mixed in with other things the way that it's meant to be.
Hmm.
Homey, warming, reassuring. Great big scary monoculture fields with nothing else growing there.
Yeah.
Terrifying, abject horror. Make it stop.
Now I'm going to go in a slightly different direction with that because when we talk about the ancient and the deep forest and stuff, what we're effectively talking about are large monocultures of forest that dominated the planet. So
A
there,
forest isn't a monoculture. It's an
it's an
entire
ecosystem. You're right.
biome.
You're right. You're right. But I'm stretching a little bit here, but I'm trying to stress the kind of deep, dark elder god scary that was present in those places.
Okay,
Um,
I get what you're getting at. Yeah.
yeah. So that is like when we talk about, to bring it again back to the Bible again, when we talk about these big damn scaries of nature here, like it wasn't, and this is kind of to somewhat explain Pharaoh's kind of intransigence here a little bit too. These were not like unexpected to have, oh, great like non-Euclidean horror just pours out in a swarm from the deep. Yeah, that's a thing that happens. Fuck, that fucks us up. But what are you gonna do? He's just sometimes you get Cthulhu. Um,
Do you think a swarm that big makes a reaper noise? Good
I would be interested to see what kind of noise a swarm like that actually makes. Yeah, but I wouldn't.
Lord. I'll pass on that experience. Sorry, continue.
No, I have to admit, I do have a certain kind of morbid fascination with those kind of apocalyptic moments. It's something that I find deeply interesting. But while I don't want to experience them, I will grant I do find them very interesting. So yeah, we
I was gonna
haven't
say,
even.
buckle up, Buttercup. We're probably in store for a few of them.
Yeah, strap in, shit's about to happen. Speaking of which, we haven't even talked about the darkness yet.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Too far. So, what are your thoughts on the great and terrible deep darkness?
It's one of the places where I'm curious what I'd like to hear Alder's translation of this as well, but it mentioned a darkness you can feel.
All right,
And I was like ooh, mood. Like it portray I wanted to say paints a picture, but pure blackness, that's not what I'm going.
It's a
It
short
paints a
section.
scene.
I can go ahead and read Alter's translation of this last bit here. So here we go. And the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the heavens, that there be darkness upon the land of Egypt, a darkness one can feel. And Moses stretched out his hand over the heavens, and there was pitch dark in all the land of Egypt 3 days. No one saw his fellow, and no one rose from where he was 3 days, but all the Israelites had light in their dwelling places. And Pharaoh called to Moses and said, Go, worship the Lord, only your sheep and cattle will be set aside. Your little ones too may go with you. And Moses said, You yourself too shall provide us sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may do them to the Lord our God. And our livestock too shall go with us, not a hoof shall remain. For from it we shall take to worship the Lord our God, and we ourselves cannot know with what we shall worship the Lord our God until we come there. And the Lord toughened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not want to send them off. And Pharaoh said to him, Go away from me, watch yourself. Do not again see my face, for on the day you see my face, you shall die. And Moses said, Rightly you have spoken. I will not see your face again. So, couple of surprises in there. What jumped out at you?
I mean, I love the full-on like WWE style like threat of bodily harm if I ever see you again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. But I don't know. It's drama. It's interesting. But specifically, I'm bringing it back up. One thing that was a difference that I noticed when you were reading Alter's version there,
Mm-hmm.
specifically, is that it says that the Hebrews had light in their dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. And this is something that I tend to get a little annoyed with in most biblical
I was wondering, I'm
translations.
like, was it just light around the Hebrew sector of this part of Egypt?
Yeah, this is something I tend to get annoyed with in a lot of biblical translations, is they tend to kind of over mystify the kind of what's happening. So the NRSVUE gives us where is it? But all the Israelites had light where they lived, which kind of vagues it up a little bit. But the Hebrew, as Alter translates it anyway, is much more specific about that. They had light in their dwelling places. The hell? That was annoying. Okay, so I want to see if he makes,
that makes a great deal more sense.
see if he makes any note about this real quick. 23. Yeah.
But we're talking. Oh, I get to know out now. We're talking about a supernatural dark here, not normal. You know, it is pitch dark. You are likely to be eaten by a Gru. It's not even just a dark you can feel, a consuming dark. I'm now going to bust out my Tolkien knowledge and say this sounds like unlight.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. And I'm going to pair that with this line from Alter's notes as well. The previously reiterated opposition between the Israelites and the Egyptians is here made boldly schematic as the dramatic manifestation of God's miraculous intervention. The contrast between light in Goshen and the terrifying darkness in the rest of Egypt then sets the stage for the distinction between life for the Israelites and death for the Egyptians in the 10th plague. Because guess what's coming up next?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I've read this tale before.
Yeah, we are reasonably familiar
Many
with
a
it.
time.
So, yeah, but this is no pun, well, pun slightly intended, a bit of foreshadowing of what is to come.
No, it's entirely fair. And again, we're talking about things that are that are stories from well before recorded history.
Right. Now in the chat we've got the quote.
Essential.
Yeah, in chat we've got someone saying a darkness you can feel makes me think of some sort of thick smog. And I actually want to take that down a little bit, because that suggests, like, smog suggests something you can see and feel, but also like breathe in, like something's clouding the air like that. And I don't think that's what this is talking about. I think this is more like a darkness so omnipresent as to be oppressive, like being in your own little sensory deprivation tank type shit. So I don't think it has the cloying effect of smog per se, but it is definitely oppressive in a way that darkness normally doesn't get in our day-to-day lives, especially with all the light we've got on in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it is tough to find out. It is very difficult to find absolute dark.
I will say this, as
Um,
someone who has had the privilege of spending a little time out in the rural parts of Japan once in a while, is I thought I knew what dark was until I got into the middle of nowhere and night fell and nobody nearby had their lights on, and I'm like, oh shit,
and then you look up at the sky
yeah, that's
and you
something.
see the brush strokes of creation.
Yeah, there's a lot of beauty up there, but I still remember the first time I had to do a night walk to the Combini. Even like it was only like 2-3 blocks, but that's the only light nearby is where the Combini's at, and that's about a 5-minute walk. And so it is everything else around you is just dark and trees and nothing. You even take out your phone flashlight, and that gets you about 2 feet in front of you, and it's dark, and it took some getting used to be sure, but as a Westerner, we don't normally get that very much, um, and it's a bit shocking. And yes,
I'm wondering how mu- I'm wondering how, if physical cold was an attribute of this because like
ooh, there's a thought.
have you felt a shadow fall on you before, right?
Yeah,
Where it's like, "Ooh, that's a lot colder," and sometimes it almost feels like a cloth or something,
mm.
just you can almost feel like a pressure, a touch sensation instead of just the temperature change.
And the temperature dichotomy between light and dark would be especially pronounced in the desert, where they're used to
Yeah.
hot days and cold nights.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, you can freeze to death in the desert. Like a hot desert, you can freeze to death at night.
yeah, like you know, it would definitely be okay in a bad way if you catch my drift, like 0 Kelvin, because I'm terrible at jokes. No, it would definitely be cold and persistent over 3 days is different from like kind of the nighttime darkness they're used to. Because it gets cold at night, but then the sun comes out, it warms back up. There's a cyclical aspect to that even in the desert. But three
Mm.
straight days, it goes down, and you get to that point at midnight where the temperature starts to start coming back up, and it doesn't come. Like imagine that first of the 3 days, like the darkness falls. You're used to that cycle. The temperature is going down, then around about like 2, 3 in the morning, it starts to come back up again as the sun's getting closer and closer and closer. It gives me kind of the sense of kind of like this sort of fractured reality stuff where you think it's going to end and it doesn't. Like I had an almost like crazy sort of experience where I was driving through the tunnels underneath Tokyo a couple of months back, and I took a wrong turn and I wound up in a different part of the tunnel system I'd never been into. And I'm like, fine, I'll take the next exit. We're in Tokyo. There's an exit every like minute and a half. 15 minutes later, I'm still going down the same utterly repeating tunnel, and I'm like, this ain't right. There's something scary wrong about this. And of course, turns out I was just underwater and I had to get to the other side. But that moment where you're like, oh, oh, this is unreal. Like, I'm expecting the end to be here. There's a pattern I expect here. My expectations are not being met in a truly terrifying way. This is some back rooms level shit. So they're used to, like, people in that time are used to nature operating in specific ways. The cycles and patterns of nature are as familiar to them as our television schedule was when we were growing up. We don't have television schedules anymore, but you know what I mean. So for them to be like, okay, the night is falling, it's really dark, but okay, like I feel the temperature going down, it's going to hit this point, it's going to go back up, it always does, and then it just keeps going down for 3 straight days. They were expecting about 4, maybe 5 hours, and then it ticks back 3 straight days. That is horrifying to think about. That is, from the perspective of them, literal back rooms shit. And if any of them happen to stumble out of their homes and you know take notice of the Israelites sitting happy and shiny in their homes, that would have been even more confusing. It would have been like this. None of this, but reality is not functioning the way it should. And so we
Hmm.
have gone from the naturally explicably miraculous to the elder god is the elder god is extremely angry with you, and reality is no longer a consideration, you are going to get fucked in ways that defy what is possible.
Well, they can't say they weren't warned. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And now we're gonna.
Somebody whip up a meme of like Pharaoh turns around and shoots Israel. Here's back. Why would God do this?
No. Turns around and shoots the Israelites and turns back to camera. Hey, who turned out the lights?
You're breaking the format. It doesn't work anymore.
That's what I do. But I'm going to end this in kind of a dark place because I think it's necessary. Because we talk about this in kind of larger social terms, as well as on the individual level. And we're going to get in the next episode when we tackle that great and terrifying 10th plague. Why wasn't it just Pharaoh's house? Why was it everybody?
Yeah.
And
what did those people do to deserve any of that?
One of the answers, and I'm not saying there necessarily is an answer, but one of the answers here is the doctrine of social responsibility, and that basically would be answered here. There comes a point at which your leaders are doing something so horrific and unjust that if you are not taking active opposition, then you are contributing to the problem by choice. And there is an argument made here that by the people not rising up to overthrow Pharaoh, that they joined in complicity after this. Like, if this shit happens, and you're like, no, we're still cool with Pharaoh. He says, fuck the Israelites. We're ride or die on this train. Then... Okay,
but could the people have just overthrown Pharaoh?
Possibly. I don't know. I'm spoilers for next episode. There are no clear answers to that question. We really have to kind of figure out which answers we're comfortable with here, because this is more relating what happened than telling us about the rationale for it. So for me, one of the things I look at, one of the sermons I might preach off of this would be on the doctrine of social responsibility. This is when you do not oppose the unjust, when you are taken to and past the brink to the point at which it is entirely obvious that you have offended the Lord our God, and that, fire and brimstone and sulfur hail and, Sodom and Gomorrah type shit is on the horizon for you as a people. And your position is to sit back and say, well, hey, at least my grocery prices are a bit cheaper. Then...
You think there were a lot of people emigrating from Egypt at that point who were like, these plagues seem to keep coming. I'm gonna go spend a few years over in, Lebanon.
Yeah. Good time to be a desert hermit.
Huh?
Good time to be a desert hermit.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, entirely possible. And I'm not going to, and again, what we're talking about here is extrapolatory. None of it's presented in the text. But I'm not going to dismiss the possibility that in this situation, there might have been a fair few Egyptians converting to Judaism too. Which was even allowed for in that situation. Like, fuck it, I'd rather be a slave with light and, on the side of the God who's doing this. So that, there are other stories that are happening here that are not told biblically or historically that we can consider but can never know for sure. I have to think stuff like that had to be going on in the background. Like, old Jim Bob Egyptian's like, yep, I have seen the light and the light is over there, so I'm going over there. I'm switching sides, man. And Ra ain't got shit on this. Which
t-shirt idea.
Yeah, which fair. And I knowing God as I tend to think I do, I would think that God would be like, sweet, more the merrier, hop on board. Which, of course, and this is fascinating thought for all of us.
It offends my sense of justice. Like, the kids, they're very explicit about children dying.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. We'll get into that in a little more depth on the next episode, but
you're gonna have a rough one with me on that one. You are.
Don't expect me to justify it. I'll tell you that. I'm not even
This
necessarily.
is a base story. This is a base Abrahamic story.
You're not wrong,
So
but that doesn't necessarily. And again, it comes back to our primary insistence of the Bible. Just because it happened doesn't necessarily mean it was right in the way we understand right and wrong today. Doesn't mean
but
it's defensible.
you're saying this was God making it happen.
There is a lot of debate on the agency of God in that particular scenario, and we're going to get into the weeds on that one. Next episode is going to be a doozy because
The agency of God?
yeah,
Isn't God by definition all powerful? Isn't that like the meaning of the word?
yes, but did God make this choice, or was this choice a result of human choices? There's a lot to unpack, and like we're not going to get to it today. I can see you chomping at the bit. We're not getting to it today, but we are going to get into it next episode because there's a lot of different ways this can be looked at. Not all of them are good. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are all right, and none of them are definitive. So yeah, if you're looking for clear answers on that one, we do not have them. We're not going to have them, and we just have to be like, well, shit. So, yeah. Spoiler alert, I guess. I'm sure
Yeah,
you're.
strap in for the next one, guys. There are things that I get rather intransigent on. Justice for Children is one of them.
Yeah, I believe it or not, I'm actually in the same boat on that one. We'll get into it in more depth next week. We could spend the rest of our time fighting over that right now, and that's not going to help anybody. So, anything else you want to pull
Are
at?
there any questions? Anything from the chat or?
Chat is both quiet and on about a 20-second delay, so we'll wait and see if anything pops up in the next 20 seconds. But I think, do you have anything else you want to pull at? Any last minute threads you want to?
Not that I can really think of. Again, this is basically just things building and escalating to where they're going to end up.
Yeah, we are.
I love how we're dancing around spoilers for the next episode of a story that was like a story from before things could be written down.
Right. Yeah, we're not exactly spoiling anything here. Like, spoiler alert, I guess, on our interpretive commentary, because the story is well known. Lots of death in the next one, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and say that is it for us for today/tonight. Folks, if you're still following along, thanks. These are a hell of a lot of fun to do. We are doing a lot more churchy church stuff these days. We've got worship happening literally every Sunday now. I know it's amazing. A church meeting every Sunday. Go figure, right? It's a bit of a crapshoot as to what language it's going to be in on a given Sunday because our schedule has been kind of in flux the last couple months. I have it on good authority that from June we'll be back to our every other Sunday approach, but the next 2 Sundays are going to be Japanese services with, of course, English translation. Pastor Akiko getting on the subtitling boards and making sure that every sermon has comprehensible English subtitling live. If you're in Japan with us, by the way, that subtitling is also available in the building. We have it set up so that you can see the subtitle sermoning as it happens to make sure that you can understand and everything that's going on. Let's see. What else we got going on? We got our Bible. This time, by the way, we have our Bible study today. We have a live stream today. We have our Bible study next week. Every other week, a live stream, Bible study, live stream, Bible study. If there's a 5th week, I don't know, we're going to fucking do something. But 1st and 3rd of the month on this time and date, we have the live streams. 2nd and 4th, we have Bible study. Come join us. Bible studies on the Discord server, which, oh my God, you should join the Discord server if you haven't already. We do things there. Have conversations. Like, we also are like leadership teams and members and like an actual fucking church. So you should do the thing with us. It's a fun thing to do. Speaking of members, if you want to become a member of the church, we are doing that. We're really trying to push for some more members to join up because we could use people to vote on shit and participate in actual doing of church stuff. Our Christianity 101.
Please come help out so that like loudmouth talking heads like me don't end up responsible for things and not getting them done.
Nah, we like Courtney. She actually does quite a lot of here. Like, she's our loudmouth talking head. That's a good thing in and of itself.
Yeah, no, I'm good at this bit. That's fine.
But more's the point.
You're not getting rid of me doing
Yeah.
this.
If you're interested in becoming a member, there's two ways to do it. Option one is our Christianity 101 course, which is kind of a once a month course that'll be running for about a year. You can take your time with it, really learn just a whole bunch of shit about what it means to be a church member, to do church stuff, and to kind of live and grow in your faith. Or we've got kind of an accelerated class for folks who want to kind of get on the job now, with the understanding that you'll still do the Christianity 101 class when you can. For the former, it's on YouTube. Instructions are on the Discord server. Go do that. For the latter, just shoot me a message. I'll get you plugged in for that. Last but not least, and definitely perhaps the most important, because we spend the majority of our time in this content fist fighting the dancing former vice president. That is the Al Gore rhythm. See, I like making that kind of face. Oh, I have the best jokes. So we do find ourselves fist fighting the algorithm a lot. So if you are willing and if you are if you are willing and if you are able to put my bad humor out there into the world, please do what Courtney will tell you to do now, which is
Like, share, and subscribe, dude.
yes, all of those things, please.
Do the things.
Yes, comments and likes and sharings and subscribings and putting this in places and like copying the link and like putting it on a fucking airplane skywriter or whatever. Whatever you can do to help us get that shit out there into the wild definitely helps. Also, if money is your thing, we have links down below. We do tithing, we do take donations. All of that is there. It's never a requirement. It's never a pressure, but we have kind of
Mechanisms are there if that's the way you want to help out.
Yeah, and I will say,
and we do always need the capitalism food.
Yeah, we have in particular, we have kind of found ourselves in a spot now where we are providing domestic violence support services and other stuff here in our area of Japan that doesn't exist. Somewhat unexpectedly, we've kind of become the point people for that. And
very unexpectedly.
Yeah, very unexpectedly. But
you do a fantastic job.
Yeah, we ain't turning folk away. If people need help, we're going to help them. But we do not have the resources to keep doing that. So if you want to help us with that, please do. We're also trying to, help folk in the U.S. escape from, the U.S. So if you want to help with that too, reach out, let us know. Preferably via Discord to make contact. We'll talk with you via Signal. A bit easier to communicate there for reasons. But we have methods for that. So get in touch, help us do stuff. Come join us on Discord. Most importantly, guys, have yourself a wonderful couple of weeks, and we will see you on the next episode.
See you on the flip side. Bye.
Bye, y'all.